So we're recording, and this is the very first and probably the demo version or maybe the initial version of my podcast. What video audio preview is available in the recording software? Show me. Okay. All right, cool. Of a podcast, which I'm calling the Unreachable Star ModCast, Killing Puppies, the Unreachable Star ModCast, which is all about startups, venture capital, and my experience in venture capital. I actually wrote it down. It's actually pretty good. So I'm Mark Modica, the ogMod and pioneer in creating, funding, and valuing ventures. I'm going to give my insider's take and insight into the good, the bad, and the ugly world of venture capital, and my quest to change this world and help you reach your unreachable star. So I met you guys. So I wanted you to introduce yourselves. This is Salon and Nitya. And you guys can not butcher your names because you know them the way I do. And give just a little bit about who you are, and we can start talking about, I can tell you why I picked you guys to actually help as freshmen in college, which I didn't realize you were freshmen, I don't think at the time, which is actually way better. And what we've done so far. And I want your take on the Killing Puppies name, because I know that's going to offend a shit ton of people. And you can help me talk about why I call it Killing Puppies based upon what you heard in when I presented to your, I think it was a venture program, some venture thing. So why don't you guys just give a little background of you guys real quick, who you are, what you're doing, and we can take it from there. And then I'll fill all the color in about why I did this and what's going on.
Okay, sure. So I'll go first. My name is Nitya. I am a first-year DS major at Georgia Tech. And for the past 1.5 years, I've been working on a startup called Identity Wallet, which basically helps give internet users control over their data and allows them to start making money from it, essentially. And so it's all about data sovereignty, giving control back to the user, making sure that there's no unfair advantage that companies have when dealing with consumer data. And something I'm passionate about is just making sure that I can do my part to make the world a better place, which is kind of what Identity Wallet is about as well.
All right, so I'm Salon. I'm also a first-year CS major at Georgia Tech, and I started at Identity Wallet at the beginning of my freshman year. So when I first met Nitya, and I heard the idea, I thought it was super cool. And what intrigued me the most about it was how the data is valued and how it actually ensures that users are the ones who decide what's done with their data. And it's not like random companies out there who get to choose what's done with your data. So yeah, and I'm really excited to be on the podcast.
So who wants to go as to why I call this Killing Puppies? I'll get to the Unreachable Star part. But why am I calling it Killing Puppies, and what do you hear, and why do you think that was kind of funny? Even though, we don't want to kill puppies. But so someone take a shot at that, and then I can add some color. But I think you guys get it. So it'd be cool coming from you guys.
Okay, yeah, I can. So my understanding is that right now it's very easy for puppies or like these very, very small startups that are just beginning to get a little bit of funding, but then just get killed in that sense of killing puppies. And so what we're trying to do is, or what you're trying to do in using the mod score, is to prevent that from happening. So to make sure that they're getting the right funding at the right stages and it follows through. It's not just like a little bit at the beginning and then that's all.
Yeah, so that's a part of it, which is great. So that's what I was trying to get across. There's a lot of seed funding and a lot of growth funding. But the primary thing that's really important, which is good to go over this again with you guys, is when you get into getting investors that are financial investors, venture funds, and particularly companies that have moonshots, which we'll call our, unreachable star. So I'm going to be getting people on here talking about really global brands or really something that has the potential to be really big. And when I heard you guys talk about what you were doing, particularly the fact that Nitya, am I saying that right, Nitya?
Yeah, Nitya.
Nitya. Okay, great. That she had done this in high school, and that she had come up and done a really interesting sort of MVP, which is like your test in high school, and created something that was really hard to do. And then she continued it as a freshman in Georgia Tech, which the real problem is that most of the venture capital world and even your parents or society is not geared to support these quests or these unreachable stars or these mission impossibles. And so what happens is that most of the startups or most of the companies will, particularly the ones that have the big plays, the whole point of all of it is to develop some kind of product and then spend a lot of your time on getting funded. And so getting funded is almost like validation. Getting funded is like telling your parents this is real. Getting funded is like the world saying, yes, this has some level of value, or your idea has some value. And it also gets you the kind of money that you need. However, the way the venture funds are set up, and the reason I've called it killing puppies, is because one of the largest venture funds in the world, one of the first ones, one of the partners told me, we weren't laughing, but I was saying, hey, why don't you guys, if a company doesn't make it, why don't you just sell it back to the founder? Or why don't you push it off to somebody else who may fund it? Because I see a lot of great companies who just don't make it. They may be a mediocre in a great portfolio. And depending upon when the fund is actually either doing well or, the money that a fund allocates, let's say, so from a math perspective, let's say they have 10 companies and they have 10 million allocated to each company, and they give $1 million first to each one of those companies. It's a waterfall effect where the best companies get the remaining money. Even though 10 million was allocated to you, if you can't keep up with the other people in their portfolios, they won't allocate that money to you. And then you're always raising money and you're always trying to go out, and you sometimes spend the money poorly or do unnatural acts, spend it too fast, spend it too slow, based upon the fund's way to allocate. Because remember, they have got to spend their money every 5 years, and they allocate it based upon sort of sector, cool plays, stuff like that. And why we call it killing puppies is because this one guy who was a really great partner, really nice guy, actually passed away early, in his 40s. He said basically that they kill puppies because they have to put them out of business because they just can't keep up. They don't have the time to help you run your business if you're not keeping up, and they don't want to sell it back to you. And so essentially, with preferred stock, the model of you getting money, if it's not common, it's preferred, they get ownership of your idea. So essentially, when you get money into a real fund or you get real venture capital, you are selling your idea or your puppy to someone who doesn't have your puppy's best interest. They don't have the same passion that you have. They don't have the same mission that you have. They don't have the same quest that you have. It's basically all numbers and all trying to get allocations and getting their fees, and essentially they make 20%. So they're really like middlemen or brokers, right? So this modcast is going to talk about hacking that world, but at the same time, that I'm building a different world called the Ventureverse, which is where I'm going to try to get capital to people like you, where you're not selling your ideas and where you're not having to give that up, and you're not having to be put into this competitive world where only 8,000 venture deals get done every year. Does that make sense to you guys? So let's say there's a lot of companies that get $1 million or $500,000, and you're really focused on that right now, right? You've already got product, you've already got proof of concept, and we'll talk about that a little bit, but you also need money. And if you get that money, then you got to sell like 20 or 30% of your company. And then if you don't increase valuation and get into the next level, which is much harder, the venture side, the A, B, C rounds, which is the big money, that's the really hard part. Even if you get that kind of money, then you still have to compete with a bunch of other people who are going after a limited number of spots. So it's like everyone trying to go to Harvard, right? Or trying to go to Georgia Tech or trying to go someplace else. There's a limited number of spots. Everyone's competing for their spots, but they really don't know why they're going there. And they really haven't thought it through about, hey, why didn't I just continue to build my company? Why did I go to Georgia Tech? Well, your parents wanted you to go there. You go to Georgia Tech, you get a great job. Great. But maybe that's not the pathway you actually want to be on. But everyone goes, oh yeah, you're great. You got into this school. Or maybe you didn't get into Harvard. You didn't go to here. Well, you didn't get your money from Sequoia. So basically what we want to talk about in this podcast this modcast is how do you keep from selling your idea? How do you keep from growing it in a way that you can reach your unreachable star, your quest? How do you value yourselves properly? How do you value what you're doing? And how do you get funded or get the money that you really need to then reach the end game? So the killing puppies part is what we said before is no more dead puppies. We don't want dead puppies. We don't want ideas to go by the wayside. I've seen so many amazing companies in my lifetime that just didn't get the right funding, or they got the wrong partner at the wrong fund. And so it's very driven towards a partner driven approach, which means that it's a people approach, which means that you have to get the right person at the right fund. There's not enough funds. There's not enough people. It's not data driven. It's not AI driven. And it's not, the power is all in their hands. You have very little power, but you actually have the idea, which has all the power. So how do we take the power of the people that have the ideas and take it away from the middlemen, the venture capitalists, and kind of move them upstream to where there are more growth guys, which is what they're doing right now? And how do we get you that money that you need right now without you having to give up your quest or alter your quest or have board meetings once a month and all this other nonsense? So I know I rambled a little bit, but what I want to do, and again, my background for this modcast is I've spent 30 years working with startups, working in funds, doing all things venture capital. I was a pioneer in the first accelerator, the first quick pitch competition or demo day, which later became the one of the largest sort of pitch competitions in the country, if not the world, through the number one law firm in the world. And so I've seen both sides of it. I've seen the sides where there's people getting money and what they're doing to get money, and people allocating the money, the good and the bad of it. And out of that, I'm building this world where we're going to change this. But if you don't really understand the problem and don't really understand how you can navigate that problem, you're not going to even come to my world or for me for help, because you're not going to really understand that there's actually a problem until it's done. So what I want to get back to with you guys is I want to go back. What we talked about first is when we talk about like mission or passion or quest, most people that are your age, 18, 19, 20, 21, even in their 20s right now, they're looking for a new life. They don't want the same life as their parents. They're not looking for pure careers. They don't want to be married and have babies at a certain time. They're looking to do something really interesting. And there's the whole group of people like that. And that's growing and growing and growing, which is really cool. Most people will say that they want abundance, freedom, passion. They want to make money. They don't want anybody telling them what to do. And they want to be able to work on or invest in to do cool stuff. Like that's sort of the creator world. And that's sort of everybody. Right above that is this world that I love. And I love that world too. But right above this is the world where I call a quest. What's your quest? What's going to not ever stop you from doing it? Why did Mark Zuckerberg drop out of college? And again, he only got $500,000 to go to San Francisco. He dropped out of Harvard and was funded $500,000. If either of you told your parents you got $500,000 and you wanted to drop out of Georgia Tech, do you not think that they would call you home and give you and read you the Riot Act? So tell me a little bit about that. Like, I'm going to give you $500,000 and you're going to drop out and move to San Francisco or Singapore or Boston or someplace. How would they react to that? I want to hear that. That's going to be the fun part of this. That's the interesting part of this is the obstacles you have to go, not just the funds and the venture capitalists. And you guys had a pitch competition. You got second in it. So let's hear a little bit about you guys. What would happen if I got you, let's say you got $500,000, like $500,000. Someone dropped it in your lap. Let's say the Ventureverse was going like I told you it could go. And let's say I signed you up and said, here's $500,000. And by the way, no one's going to own any of your company right now. Here's $500,000. But what we want you to do is we want you to drop out of Georgia Tech. And forget that college shit that you're doing right now, because most of the classes are fairly useless. You both went to really good high schools. I know that Salon went to TJ, which is like the number one high school in the country. So 80% of the classes you're taking at Georgia Tech, you've already either done or you've already Googled or done online, and you could do any of this. And so I'm sure Nitya, I'm gonna screw that up. I'm sure that you back in Singapore, you went to probably a very prestigious school, did very well because at Georgia Tech, right? Tell me, like, what's that? Like that's important because that's the stuff you guys are up against in this world where people are getting fired from Facebook right now. You know, the world's falling apart. Cryptocurrency's taking a dump. It's like literally crashing, which is actually good for me because I think trading in currencies is like a waste of time. But it was good the way Bitcoin and the blockchain were created. It just validates the blockchain, and disintermediation is really good. And the decentralization of things is really good, right? So Nitya, I want you to go first. I want both of you to give your opinion. If you had money, I got you money right this second, and you know $500,000 isn't going to do shit for you. It's not going to take you where you really need to go. Would you drop out of school, and would your parents have a heart attack?
I mean, I think my case is slightly different. But I think, okay, so like in my case, I have like my mom and my dad, right? My mom is really, she's really like, she wants like a safety net of type. She's like, she wants me to be able to, get a job and an internship, make sure like all of that's going on along with. She wants
her grandkids. So like, that's like,
yeah, I guess that's like that. But, yeah. But
to be like racist, but like Indian families are like, just so tight, and it's fantastic. Mm-hmm. I think Northern Virginia has so many, like I told you, the Indian high-tech CEO mafia there, great families, good culture, people that come across and support each other. So all good,
Yeah. And then I think on the other side, my dad is, he's an entrepreneur himself. Yeah. So he has more of a risk-taking mindset. He's usually like, if I told him I wanted to drop out, he'd probably be all right with it. And if my startup did fail, right, like in the case that like things didn't go out well, I'd probably come back to college, or try to get a job with whatever skills I had. So he's of that perspective, but my mom is of quite the different, that like I should go to college, make sure that like, I kind of pass all like the milestones and then eventually get some kind of job that's like safe, it's all about the safety for her.
So you can work at Deloitte, or you work at Facebook, or you work at the next big, funded startup, or, it's like really well-paid slavery. It's really cool. It's great.
Yeah, actually, that's exactly how my dad puts it. He says it's well-paid slavery.
Exactly. And then even when you get funded, it's like, when you get funded, the funny thing is like you get a job and you get a job and a lottery ticket. Like that's what it is. Like you get more lottery tickets depending upon, if you get Sequoia, you get a lot of lottery tickets, or Lightspeed or something like that. If you got a smaller fund, or, the funds that don't have the deep pockets, which you really need, again, and it's like, to me, it's like magic beans. It's like Jack of the Beans. It's like they give you, like you're trading your idea for magic beans. Like it's so stupid. Yeah, and then you work for them, and they're not really working for you. But I love these guys. I mean, that's the good part, is that the best ones, the best VCs really have created an opportunity for what I'm doing, which is like this Ventureverse thing. And they've created like some of the greatest companies in the world. However, the model is broke and it can't scale. And they kind of know that. Like Barry Eggers, who's the head of Lightspeed, told me, like he wrote this great Medium article about they were going to get replaced by AI and all the small funds are going to get washed out, which I think a lot of them are going to get washed out right now. It's just because the model is so people-based, right? And it really needs to be data-driven, right? Just like your model. Your model is very data-driven, which is very cool. And it's taking out the middleman and it's trying to go to taking out really the advertisers, or at least giving the advertisers what they really want, or giving the people that are selling products and the people that are buying products. You're basically, and we're going to get into this a little bit. I'm going to do like your little, we're going to do like a little pitch competition, a little pitch back. You're going to pitch and I'm going to pitch it back to you. But anyhow, so you would get so you would have a conflict. What about you? I'm going to keep saying Saloni or Salani, and they're both wrong, right?
Well, Saloni's correct, yeah, but Saloni's like, I've heard that a lot, so it's okay. But yeah, Saloni's the correct one. Yeah, but I think that if I was given that amount of money, I feel like my parents would definitely, I don't think they would stop me at all. Like if I really wanted to drop out and it was my decision, I think they would have faith in like my decision and they would be like, yeah, okay. And like, once again, like Nitya said, you can always come back to college, but then, like when you're given money at the right time, which is hopefully the right time, then you can't miss that opportunity. So, yeah.
In my experience, having raised a ton of money, like, almost $1 billion or 800 million. And again, I didn't raise it like a venture investment banker, so people will question that. It's just I've been on the side of companies that raise money, and I had these firms where I help people attract the capital and get the capital they needed. There's no real right time. It's just the structure of the deal that you do and where you spend the money. Because the big mistake actually is where people spend the money. People spend a lot of the seed capital on product and a lot of the capital on trying to grow a market that is, you can't grow a market on seed capital. It's impossible. What you need to do is get, like what we're working on right now, is you need to get evidence of that market. You need to have product, but you don't need to have as much product as most people think. And when your pitch was pretty good when you were at the beginning, because it was less about your product. It was somewhat, but it was more about like you're trying to fix something that's broke, right? And you know that I hooked into that right away, right? Because I actually took the time to listen, and I thought this was really cool. Where a lot of VCs won't take that time; they just don't have that capacity to listen to every deal, and they really are spending a lot of time raising money for their own funds. They're really excellent at raising money for themselves and not raising money for their companies. And they don't spend as much time as people think helping those companies build, right? Because they really don't have the capacity to do that. And a lot of them haven't done some of the things that you guys need to do. So I don't think there's really a right time. I just think that you need to know what you're worth. You need to know if it's validated. And we'll talk about that in a second. The things that have to happen from a perspective of what do you think you're worth? What do you think your thing's worth? And have you validated something where you believe, man, I believe in this 100%. I drop out of college now with or without money, right? So let's go back to the thing that I think is the most important. Let me go to my notes real quick because I don't want to be, I can be all over the place. My big thing is venture capital is not data driven. It's brand driven. Funds creating their brand and partners creating their unique brand. They're good at creating their own brands. They're good at creating partner brands. They have the Midas touch and all that. So the key to what you're doing right now is three things. And then, so I want to walk through those three things and focus on the first one. The key is to identify your quest. What I mean by a quest is, before we talked about abundance, freedom, and passion. Those are all drivers of why anybody does anything for money or power or anything. But the thing that's above that really is, and passion is part of that, is really people will say, what's your mission statement. And I do that. The mod score, which is part of this, has that component of it. In the mod score, how I curate companies is, are you a mission-oriented founder? Mission-driven founder? Are you obsessed with your customers, your market? And do you have the domain expertise, or have you gotten that? That's the mod. That's why I'm the OG mod. This is like the ModCast. That's the whole point of the mod. Like, you're a mod. Each one of you is a mod, but you're not a full mod because you haven't bet on yourselves fully yet. You're kind of waiting for someone to give you the money before you bet on yourselves fully, which is okay. You did early on in high school. You spent a bunch of your time that you could have been doing other shit, and you built a market we'll talk about in a second. And then Salon decided to jump on your bandwagon and said, cool, I want to be part of this too. So you convinced her and you love this, and that's great. So you're taking a risk by spending any amount of time on this at all. So I don't want to talk about that. The thing is to identify what the quest is. That's one. To then value your quest, which we don't do, which I'm an expert on. My whole thing is I'm an expert in valuation and valuing, which, as you know, my whole ModScore platform, my data platform, is about valuing startups or valuing companies, but really it's about valuing a quest, which is my version of a global brand, my version of something, a moonshot, right? And then the third thing is to fund your quest. So we go from thinking of something cool, building something, testing it out, and then running to funding. Right? But then we don't know how much we need. Like we've talked about this. How much do you actually need? What would you spend it? When you spend it and did exactly what you thought you were going to do, how much would you be worth? No one can answer those questions. No one can answer what you're worth now, how much you actually need to get to the next level, which is you don't want to be going incremental levels because then you'll give your company away. You want to be making big jumps because you can't give a third of the company away enough and then you're out of business, right? Which is what the VCs kind of take 20%, 30%, 10%, whatever it is. So that's the whole valuation game. Once you're on that game, it's really hard because your next round has to be bigger, has to be higher. You have to do things. And then you'll start listening to people that will, instead of going to your quest, they'll be telling you to get more revenue or get more customers or get more this or that. That might not necessarily lead to value. It might lead to value for them short term, or it may lead to you just maybe looking kind of good and then your company fails because it didn't have enough what we call trajectory. So if each of you were to pitch me what your quest is, what's the long-term quest of this thing? Like, like you're trying to save the world, but what's the quest? What's the ultimate quest? And you gave a little bit of it first, but I want to pitch it back to you. I want to hear both of you say what you think your quest is, the thing that you're trying to do, the thing that you're going to end up with, and do like a vision quest. We're going to do like a little visioning right here. What's your vision of what it's going to be when you're successful and you're like, shit, I made it? What is that thing? And this is really hard. People call this an elevator pitch, but I don't think it's an elevator pitch because it's much more complicated than going up an elevator. It is really talking about something that is very abstract, very intangible, but that's where all the money is. That's where the value is. Like crypto is very abstract, right? Anything that has any value today is super abstract, right? It's not like tangible. It's not like building a chair or something or a computer, right? It's very abstract. So why don't you go first? Since this was your sort of big thing, Nitya, why don't you go first?
Yeah, so I'd say the quest really, or the vision is that, say, 3 years down the line, every person has their identity in their control, which means that they can access it, they can understand what that identity is, like that their digital footprint is, and they can control who gets access to that information. So currently the problem is that people don't have control over where their information is going. And half the time they don't even understand how much their information is worth, right? Because, when we're on the internet, cookies parse our data, they track us online, and then they sell information about our behavior, our preferences to companies. And so we want to give control over, that sale of information, over who gets our information in the hands of people, right? And so eventually over time, we want a change in how in the mindset that people use to approach the way data is handled, right? Both for companies and for users, because companies right now are relying on, these third-party advertisers because there's no such avenue for customers and users to be able to sell their data to these companies in a way that's, secure and comes straight from the user. So the way data is sold right now, the way identities are treated it's first of all, half of the information that companies get isn't correct or accurate. It's just based on, machine learning models, their inferences and guesses about what users want. Instead, we want all of the control of, deciding what your digital identity is to be in the hands of the user. And we want to give them the ability to sell their data, to choose to, store it some way, to choose to share it with someone.
But it was good. It was really good. We're going to cut that down. This is all personal, the pitch back, because I can't even do my own right. My own sounds like yours. It's good. It leads. It goes on and on and on. But it was good. I mean, it was fantastic. I'm not putting it down, but we need to cut that down to something so core, so fundamental, such a moonshot that it sounds impossible. What you said sounded possible. I want it to sound impossible. I want it to be so stupid, so daring, so ridiculous, so big that people go, holy shit, wow. And then they have to turn, well, can she do it? Can a young Indian woman as a freshman in college carry that out? And then, of course, then we win. If we've got that, if people go, oh my God, holy shit, wow, what you're doing is like so crazy. You don't think you could do that, do you? If we get people into that position, we win. Because yeah, of course, because like the whole thing is every other person that has ever done anything near like that is exactly like you are today. So you give us your version of it, Shalani.
Well, I was going to say something very similar to what Nitya said, but yeah, I mean, not as long because obviously she's...
Tell us why you joined. I'm doing the mic thing. I haven't figured out the whole hardware shit yet and the back noise. Because the thing about this software, this Squadcast software, is it's recording on your own system. It's not that's why it's a little bit better, because I think it's recording at your computer or in the cloud at yours, and then I know it does something like that, but I think when it's localized, it's much better the way it records. But anyhow, go ahead. Give us I interrupted. Give us what did you see about her and what she was doing and her quest? Because she started this quest, and we're going to talk a little bit about that, which is super important for people to understand that you just didn't come up with this thing and not do anything or write some code because you're like a smart girl. No, you actually tested this thing, and you did something that is like, you did something that validates that you can do it. But go ahead.
To answer that first part, like what I saw in her, it was that she was like completely dissolved in sort of what she was doing, like completely immersed in the idea behind what she pretty much just said. And I think sometimes startups just seem so, or like creating your own company, there just seems to be so many different parts to it. But the fact that like she dared to take that first step and to even begin, I think that's really impressive. And that sort of drive is also, I wanted to be part of that. And then I would say in terms of the company itself, I think what's a little scary is that how normalized it's become for us to, for example, see things that we see advertisements that we literally just talked about. We didn't even search up in our feeds and just think, oh, whatever, and just scroll past it. And helping people realize what's going on in the background, and also helping them understand that that data is theirs is why I want to be a part of this. Yeah.
So the thing that, and I love this is real time. This is like not studio bullshit. Like you're at college and I'm like in my apartment in like the Hollywood Heights. So what I see really quickly is every person has a value, and we're giving our power away. And for you to give your power away, you first have to understand what you're worth. And you're building a system that will enable anybody to understand what they're worth, because your data is just you. What are you worth? Like, you will probably may never be as valuable as you are today. You're young Indian women who are super smart at college and have proven all this stuff. And every advertiser should want to get you and give you stuff and get you into their subscriptions and their stuff and whatever they're selling for life, right? But it's a huge problem because you're inundated with a lot of crap and you're trying to do your own thing instead of being able to curate that. So if you had the power and you knew what you were worth and you had a place that could help you, you would give your data to a place that could help you value that. And then once they value that, gave you the control over what offers you're getting or what free shit you're getting. Because remember, we talked about free shit first, offers second, and then the curation of really big things like fintech, right? So if there was a Switzerland, sort of like a place that didn't care, it's your data. We're going to tell you what you're worth. We're going to tell you what you're worth to the advertisers. We're going to tell you what you're worth to the product people, thereby disintermediating advertising and kind of Facebook stuff. Then you become the decentralized portal or the place where I'm going to go to freely give my information and want to give my information because that creates power for me. So you're moving the power from the advertiser to the consumer, and you're also moving the power from the advertiser back to the product manufacturer. So that middleman is gone, and you're replacing that with data, which is, you're very similar, like I saw, you're very similar to what I'm trying to do. The venture funds are like the advertisers. They're the ones going to the funds of funds, to the Harvards of the world and getting their pension money and then allocating it to a bunch of, young people and trying to make money off of that by buying their ideas and hoping a couple of them make it. While the rest of them, they don't really care about because they're not in the business of having to care. That would be a bad thing if they actually cared too much. If they cared about every company, then the best ones would never make it. So it's not a bad model, but it just can't go on from now. And the advertising models that the Facebook have, it's great, but it's not what we really need. It's not what you need, right? Does that make sense to you guys? Did you feel that? So in a pitch back, when anyone ever asks you, it says, I'm going to move the power from the advertisers to the consumer and from the advertisers to the product guys. And I'm going to balance the playing field. And I'm going to build a system that's going to help you understand your worth and get the maximum for what your value is. So we could we could work all day on like what that pitch is, because that's kind of what I've helped companies do. But like you get that. Like so it's the consumer and having that person understand their worth. So a lot of times with FICO scores and things like that, I told you I had one credit card and I maxed it out and I forgot to pay it on time and I dropped 50 points and I'm like, wait a second, I have like $150,000 of available credit and I have one $500 credit and it dropped my score 50 points. That's stupid. Like, so the data out there is bad. It's wrong. It makes no sense. And the market instability. So you're building a marketplace for data, consumer data that the consumers control. We're building a marketplace for consumer data that the consumers control and that benefit the manufacturers and disintermediate the advertisers. That's it right there. That last piece right there. So say that back to me.
We're building a marketplace where consumers get control over their data and we disintermediate the advertisers. Something like that. But
right again. That's okay.
Could you say it again?
Yeah. We're building a marketplace where consumers get control over their data and get the power of their data so that they can take it away from the advertisers and gives the power over to the consumer and also the product manufacturers, but it creates power for the consumer. I said it better first. See, it's hard. Once you get that out, then you got to write it down and then you got to do it over and over and over again. It's like a mantra. We're trying to find that mantra. I have it in here. We'll when you hear this again, you can get it back, right? Because that's how you have to peel the onion of what your quest is. The quest, you personally, you two want to be the people that lead this revolution over consumer data. And you want to, and to do that, you have to understand, you have to get people to understand and give you data and get them to understand how much they're worth. Personally, they're worth. Like you're personally worth a lot because we know you're going to graduate college and and you're going to get a job. So we know you're worth a lot. Consumers should be crazy to get you. That's why people give free credit cards out of colleges and they try to push a bunch of crap to you. That's this whole free offer stuff, right? But like you said before, it's like really bad because it's just, it's not that great in terms of too much information at you, and it's not really well curated. Mm-hmm. The important thing is you got to get your quest down to something understandable that people really understand, that you can tell the person down the hallway, hey, as a consumer, you're worth more than you know. And we're trying to get the data to you. And we're trying to make it so that you can own your own data, which you said at first. How do you control your own data? But it's really about the value of that. We're creating a marketplace where the consumer has the power. The product companies also have a balance of power. They have a product you want. You know how much you're worth, and then you're going to build a place where people will freely give you that data so that you can make that transaction. It's peer to peer, right? Mm-hmm. Product company down to the consumer, right? So every week we're going to keep working on that until we have one statement where we can say that exactly. So basically what we need to say here is we know, but we don't, and we have to get it so it's so tight and so clear. And again, people call that elevator pitch. It's not really elevator pitch. It's literally saying what your quest is. My quest is. And so we're going to get to that point where we're going to say, my quest is this. My quest is to be the global leader in global marketplace for consumer data. Global marketplace for consumer data, driven by consumer, built for consumers, by consumers, and move the power away from the advertisers and the manufacturers and the product companies and move it back to the consumer. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes sense.
Cool. How do you value that? How do you value that thing? So we're going to keep doing that over and over again because that's a hard one. I did it. I know I did it once in there, then I couldn't do it again, that's a cool part of this. I know I nailed it. You knew it, right? You smart. I thought you
spot on. Yeah.
Nailed it. And it was exactly what it is. And then I can't do it again. So that's okay. I do this a lot, but I'm trying to do this podcast too, the ModCast. So anyhow, so when you are able to do that, that's going to give you all the confidence in the world. That's going to give you power. It's the power of your quest. And you will always be able to go back to that quest and say, that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing. And any decision you have to make, taking money, where you spend your money, always goes back to that, the power of that thing. Because there's steps from A to B to C to D to get you there. And what we're going to do is we're going to help you try to build in this. How can we go faster? And maybe we'll do this once a week and we'll do a bunch of podcasts just around just your company. And I can show everybody how you go from here and how you can do this, which will be good too. So from that perspective, let's talk real quickly about what you did in high school that was really super important. Whereas you actually proved that you could do this, and you proved it in a way that was actually the second step. You actually solved the second step. So I'll give you a little lead in, then you can talk about it a little bit. What you were attempting to do was to show that you could go to the sell side, people selling products, the company selling something, and you could convince them to give you free stuff or give you something, an offer, so to speak. And you would be able to take create the sell side, which is the consumers, the buy side, the consumers, and create a two-sided marketplace. So you created a two-sided marketplace in Singapore where you had companies and you had friends of yours or other people, and you matched them with people that were offering products and services to people that would want those products and would be willing to sell their data or give away their information to get that offer, which is a free exchange. There's nobody in the middle of that. It was just you connecting buyers and sellers over data, using consumer data, using offers. And as we said before, remember there was a 3-step. I think you need to go back and start doing some free stuff and create sort of going to the consumer side, because I think you did a good job creating the company side there. But really, we really need to go back and do the other one because the company side right now is too hard for you. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about that. Just give our audience a little bit about what you did in high school and how cool it was.
Yeah, so towards the end, like towards the end of my senior year, like the summer after, I was able to I'd been interning at a company called called Matchmove, and they're a fintech in Singapore, and a lot of like my support and guidance I got from after having interned there, just like mentorship from the people that I'd been working with.
In high
And
school.
so and so they helped connect me to a few companies, a few partner companies that they were working with. They were also funded by a venture, so they had like ties with other companies. Like there's one named DriveLaw, and so these I got like about 6 of these companies on board, including so six companies, and then we had 1,000 users
So you had
that I
six,
just got.
you had 6 companies that had sort of a network based upon the company you were. Was it like
Exactly how I was able to get.
were they all venture funded by the same people, or they just knew each other?
A few of them were. I think about 2 of them, other than Matchmove itself, were venture funded by like the same people, and then a bunch of others were just like people that like the CEO knew that he was like, oh, okay, you can connect with them and try to get them to, run with your product.
What was the first thing that you thought? Why did you do that? Like, what was the first? Like, we know why the end game is, but like something either irritated you or you were bugged by something. Like, Nitya, Saloni saying, I get advertisements of stuff I don't want, or I say something and Siri hears me or something hears me and it starts sending me stuff around that, and it's like that's annoying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so for me, it started junior year, like around near the end. I was in English class actually, and I watched The Social Dilemma. And that was where before that, I didn't care about my privacy that much. I remember distinctly, I had a classmate who was very, very like, he'd always, he cared a lot about his privacy, like data privacy, he had passwords that were different on every single like software he used. And I'd always like laugh at him. And I'd be like, it's not that important, like I'm not doing anything wrong. A lot of people are of the perception that like, if I'm not doing anything wrong, I shouldn't be worried about my privacy. Right. Or like, that's kind of the question governments pose at people too, or like companies, like if you're not doing anything wrong, why are you worried about your privacy? And the answer is like, it shouldn't be something that you should be questioned about being worried about. And so The Social Dilemma really opened up like how many layers of, intrusions to privacy go on online to me, which I wasn't like as aware of. At least I like hearing employees from those companies talking about how, certain features are just designed to actually like grab your attention,
right?
Make sure you're on the platform for longer so they can actually get more data from you. It felt manipulative to some extent because they're trying to source all of this data and farm all of it from you when they could actually just ask you about your behaviors and preferences, give you a cut for it at least, right?
Which is not your idea. I'm gonna give you a cut of this data thing, and like I'm just gonna give you offers, and you're gonna give me your data because you control it.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's the idea, and that's where it came from. This thought that like you don't need to manipulate me to take my data. You can or take it from me and then sell it to other people. I can sell it straight to those people.
That'd be a better way to do it, right? Then
exactly. And there's no avenue for that.
Not going to a hotel and not getting a taxi at 2:00 in the morning when you're drunk, which you hadn't ever had that problem because you have Uber now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's cool. So you had 1,000 people, which is amazing, and 6 companies, and you did transactions, and people got offers, and they gave away their data, or you used their data to get these offers, and you didn't give them to anybody else. You literally used that data for that transaction, but you put that data on your platform, them knowing you have their data somewhere, and you didn't spend a lot of time building a data set for that person, which is what we want to do now is we want to build a data set for each person. Because if somebody else is building a data set versus we're building a data set for you, remember, other people are building those data sets. We want to build it for you, and it's your data set that we're building. How successful was it? How did you feel? Was that good? How many transactions did you do? Was it fun? And how long did it take you to do that? Like from beginning to the end?
Yeah. So we ran the beta test, which is what it was, for about like a month.
And it built some software.
Yeah. This was all like in the first like version of the app, like the actual first version. So we had $15,000 in transactions on the system.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's kind of the way we look at it. At that point, we weren't the ones necessarily like making any profit. The idea was just like we were, and a lot of the costs were also handled by us. Like we were incurring the cost of like getting companies to try this out in the first place, right? And then slowly throughout the month, as like, you know, the system worked or began to, I guess, gain traction after like offers were on the system and populated more and more, we didn't have to take much of the cost because like this trust was built in like what we were doing, you know? The fact that like.
So remember the first thing that we said was like this quest thing. Mm-hmm. So we had somewhere in here where I gave you your quest and we're going to get that better so that you can say, this is my quest. How do you value that quest? Well, value that quest, you have to have evidence that that quest like has importance. So what you did, very important. You made an assertion that people, that people to get something will give something. Like they're going to get their cut. So you proved that someone will give their private information to get a cut of something that would have normally been given to an advertiser or somebody else, that they got it. Mm-hmm. And you proved that, right? On a small scale, on a very anecdotal scale, but it's still probably mathematically relevant. And so always remember that. You've proved that thing. You have a quest, 1. 2, you've proved something and you built software around proving that and you ran a test model on that and you proved that people will do that. They will give their information because people will say, oh, it's private, all that private bullshit. I don't care about the privacy. I've given my privacy away by signing up for free software. Like you've given it away. You're collecting your data. What I really want is to stop wasting my time and get me the products I really want. Like if I buy something and I like it, I want you to know that I like it and get me more of that. Mm-hmm. I don't want to go to a hotel in Lisbon that was really cool and a year later be getting stuff for Lisbon that I'm never going back to Lisbon right now. Like I'll eventually go back there, but I went to Web Summit and I was like super cool hotel. But like stop wasting your advertising dollars. Stop wasting my time. Stop sending me shit that I'm never going to use. Like that's the problem. It's just a complete waste of my time, right? If you can limit people's time, which is what Amazon did, right? I want a book. I don't want to drive to the store, get a clerk that's making $6 an hour back in the day. They order that book for me. They never call me back. They have a written list somewhere and I got to keep calling them to find out when that book came in. Now I know from Amazon, I can get that book. I know when it's coming and I know I'm going to get it and I never think about it again. Therefore, you freed me up from the transaction. Amazon makes you free from the transaction. It sends you a bunch of shit, blah, blah, blah. But Amazon doesn't value you. They're valuing time, which we value, and they're making it possible for a bunch of, retail sites to pop up. And they have like the largest like retail shop in the world, essentially, right? Because people sell shit all over that. So, but to you, it's the same thing. Going forward, we got our quest. We value the quest by validating what the thing is. So from that perspective, that's when I first listened and I said, "Ooh, that's really cool." Because I remember Salon was really excited about the killing puppies thing, and they laughed, everyone laughed, no more, like I said, no more dead puppies, no more dead puppies. And all the men in there just kind of like, oh, when am I going to go drinking? And some of the girls laughed, said they thought it was funny. So you've proven something that's really hard to prove. And you built some software around it and you built some cool AI and you started building some stuff around being able to build a data profile for a person and then being able to value that person. So I do the same thing. I built a profile of your company in my head, which I have a platform now, and now I'm going to be able to value that. And so let's say that you're the world's leading global leader, let's say 3 years from now, 5 years from now, whatever it is. Let's say 5 years. 5 years is a good time. Usually it's got to be done in 3 or 5 years. But let's say it takes off. That if you were the global leader in consumer data and you empowered consumers to understand their own worth, and be able to take out the middlemen, the advertisers, most of them. I mean, advertisement would change around what you're doing. They'll work with advertisers because this would make advertisers more efficient. It would make them better and it would make them more money. So it wouldn't just cut them out completely. It would just cut out all the noise. And the product guys would be able to like reduce their budgets and increase their value and reduce their costs and do really cool stuff. What do you think that's worth if you're that company? How much do you think that's worth? Yeah,
so I mean, currently the industry, just Sorry?
This is a trick question, but go ahead.
Okay. Well, I guess I can't put a number on it, but what I've researched has told me it's a $200 billion market. So obviously I wouldn't be taking $200 billion, but it would be a way to, it's a huge market, and just even a portion of that, a company dealing with, selling data the right way to the companies that are demanding it from users, it would be like a significant portion of it. I can't tell you how much, of course.
You're not selling data, you're empowering people to become owners of their data and letting them sell their data. Right?
Exactly.
You're making a consumer a powerful person in their own transaction. They become, they used to say back in the day, cash is king, blah, 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 and it's like, because if you walked into a car dealership and you had cash, you got a better deal in the 60s or 70s because it was just a pain in the ass to finance it. But now it's like the cash is the same as like financing. They have their own finance stuff, right? So if you created that, when I looked at this, I go, you're easily a multi-billion-dollar valuation, but probably more. And let's say you were the global leader in that, and people came to you and freely gave their data, and manufacturers came or finance companies came and you curated offers, you got free stuff and you had levels like we talked about of different kinds of data, and people then understood how much they're worth and how to increase their own data and how to basically become a powerful person. So the collection of all of those people is like, you're going to be able to negotiate better fees for different groups of classes of people based upon their valuation. And you're going to let them understand how valuable they are so they stop wasting their money and their time. That's $1 trillion. That's $1 trillion market. That's a Facebook type brand. Easy. Okay. Mm-hmm. And for you to do it out of Georgia Tech and to disintermediate Mark Zuckerberg or to take him on or to take on these other guys who are doing the same thing, that's impossible, right? You can't do that, right? That's impossible. It's impossible for you two freshman girls who have no money at all and have done this. That's like crazy, right? Mm-hmm. That's your unreachable star, right? That's your quest. You have a quest to be the global leader in what I said before, which was your quest, and we'll define that. 2, you've got evidence that people will give their data away and are just dying to get stuff that they would get anyhow, but they control it. And people are dying for people to value them more. Like, as a college kid, you should be worth a lot more than me. I'm at the end of my life. I don't have 50 more years to create transactions for people other than my, retirement money or like that kind of crap or having net worth. You guys are it. So you're going to be able to flip the switch and say, it's actually going to increase your college degree value. It's going to increase the value of you as a person, and it's going to increase the value of your community that you're in and the things you're doing. So you know how you're saying you're doing good things, but people don't know about it? That increases value. So every time you do something good, or you're creating transactions, or you're getting more degrees, or you're getting the best jobs, or you're doing stuff, and you're not doing, you're doing things that create value for you, you're going to be able to say, you just increased your value. You increased your identity score, your identity wall score. We're going to have a better thing than that, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's our next.
It's worth way too much for you to even think about, but that's what you have to think. I have this quest. It's $1 billion quest. I'd say it's $1 trillion quest. That people can't think that big anymore. So it's $1 billion quest. I have this quest. I have evidence that people will do what I think they need to do. Human behavior is so important in this. I have evidence that they've already done what I want them to do. Boom. Mm-hmm. You just validated. So what do you think you're worth today with your platform? And I know you're building some AI, and I know you're building some really cool stuff to make this possible for you to collect data and actually give people a score or give people their value of who they are, or help them take offers, get free stuff. What do you think that's worth today? What do you think your company is with that evidence, that quest, who you two are? What do you think that's worth today? Like, what would you think
we're at least.
What would you think
at
you're
least
worth? No, just
I think
today.
we're at least.
Today.
Just today, right now.
Right now. Today. Like if you had to take money and what valuation would you get? Would you take? I hate that question, but it's really more about what do you think you're worth? What is that worth?
With the evidence that we have, I'd say maybe 50 million.
You say 50?
Yeah.
There you go. I love it. See? Yeah. Yes. Is anyone going to give that to you right now? No. But that's what you have to keep thinking. No, but like they will. What do we have to do to realize that value? So we believe we're worth $50 million right now. And I can hear like anybody that's watching this, especially if VC's watching, like, oh, you're giving them bad advice. Yeah. F off. No. If you're not valuing yourself highly, no one else is going to fucking do it.
Mm-hmm.
Fucking value you higher than you. You have to value yourself high without being delusional. You would be delusional if you hadn't got that evidence and if you haven't got the software that I know you have and the mindset and what your good partner said is the drive and the immersion in this, which is the mod. You have the mod, right? You have a mission, you're obsessed with this, and you have the domain expertise. You acquired that expertise. You saw. People will give the shit away. And so what we're doing right now, my advice to you right now is to go onto the other side and create a community of people that you can leverage and use to go get free stuff or offers or things. Instead of going to the companies, go and build a community. And we talked a little bit about that. And I said the community that I would build if I was you guys, a very powerful community would be people that are just like you, young friends of yours who are probably, maybe Indian, who are smart at smart colleges, and you have a network of that, or whatever network you have, which you guys have told me that's the kind of network you have, that's a really powerful network. And if you created a Discord or you created something where then you could test some of these theories out about what free stuff, because let's go back to the free stuff, because the offers are a little harder right now because you're in college and you don't have time to go from company to company to did what you did in Singapore. But right now, you could create communities, and then you could prove that I could create a community that would give me data in anticipation of getting offers when you don't have any offers to give them. That would be cool.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then you could raise money on that, and that would validate your $50 million worth. Doesn't mean you're not worth it now. It would just validate it and would get us the money we really need. Right? But we're going to get it with the Ventureverse, so I'm not even worried about you getting money. I'm just worried about how much time you're going to spend on it now, not to lose momentum. And so that next semester, I want you to take crappy classes and just the 2 classes that you checked up. I want you to take classes to check the box and some fun, art classes or I don't know, whatever movie classes they have. We'll teach you, we're going to treat you like athletes. Your number one priority is building this thing because the world needs this. The world doesn't need 2 more graduates of Georgia Tech that can be engineers and make $150,000 and live in New York City. We don't need any more of those. There's that's a commodity. No one cares. And no one to go to Deloitte and have billable hours as a consultant. So you could get billed a lot and work your ass off and make other people money. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. But did you guys like this?
Yes, it was amazing. It was amazing. Very nice.
Yeah, I really enjoyed just hearing everyone out.
Bye.
Bye.
Podcast. So much fun.
You too.